Amazing Millionaire hidden. As janitor discovered an unexpected truth from a poor receptionist that could change everything. Jack Harrison scrubbed the floor of a glossy conference room under the pale glow of fluorescent lights, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He was a janitor, a ghost within the polished walls of a prestigious corporate law firm in Chicago. To his coworkers, he was just another forgotten cog in the wheel of a money-driven system. But inside, he simmered with the knowledge that he was anything but ordinary. $1 million bank account hid beneath his work uniform, a disguise he wore to shield his heart from the trauma of loss and the wounds of grief. But would it always be this way? As he mopped the floor in quiet rhythm, his thoughts danced between memories of childhood laughter, the burning pain of loneliness, and the bemusing thought of how wealth could be wielded not for power, but for goodwill. Every night he nestled into a life of humility, grateful it kept him grounded yet restless with doubt about whether he should continue hiding. He was lost in thoughts when he caught snippets of conversation from the break room through a cracked door. A group of high-earning attorneys huddled, voices low, laced with arrogance. Their topic? A wrongful termination case, which seemed more about the firm's bottom line than justice. Jack's heart raced as he listened. He'd heard this coming and going, an unsettling knot tightening in his gut. Was it too late for him to help? Or was he merely an observer, destined to remain invisible? Before he could process this, he caught sight of Lily, the firm's receptionist, chaotically balancing a tray of coffee cups on her way to an imposing meeting room. He admired her fierce determination, her head held high against a tide of indifference. In a moment they locked eyes and she offered him a shy smile, a rare spark of connection amid the marble and glass. Their late-night coffee breaks became a sanctuary for both. Jack would share stories of resilience while Lily spoke of her struggles caring for her siblings after their father's abandonment. It was a bittersweet alliance. Both felt forever driven to support others in a world that often left them behind. But with each shared moment came jagged edges of conflict that twisted Jack's insides. What would happen if Lily discovered his secret? Could he bear the disappointment it might bring? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One evening, chaos broke through their camaraderie. Lily stumbled upon Jack's personal belongings left hastily beneath a rickety desk. Curiosity compelled her to sift through the hidden contents, a stock certificate, a transfer of wealth, evidence of a life she couldn't have imagined. Jack felt time freeze as she turned, eyes wide with disbelief. The air thickened with tension. She was now a live wire, a storm brewing in the proximity of truths that hung unspoken. The loyalty he had built felt fragile, like a thread on the verge of snapping. His mind spiraled with conflicting emotions. Should he remain the man who helped others quietly, or revel in the power his wealth could wield? How would Lily reconcile her instincts to ascend the ranks of the very society that had overlooked her, against the backdrop of camaraderie they had built? Each second ached with despair as he faced an unbearable decision that loomed, weighing heavy on their connection. This moment was not merely a test of loyalty, it was the brink of a cascading fallout. Jack's future trembled as he considered revealing the identity he'd fought so hard to conceal. And Lily's eyes held the potential for understanding, or betrayal. As they stood locked in that charged silence beneath the dim break room lights, both their fates teetered like a precarious balance, each breath a countdown to irrevocable change. What truth would emerge, and at what cost? Jack's gaze remained locked on Lily, the tumult of thought swirling in his head crashing against one another like storm-tossed waves. He felt exposed, the raw edges of his life laid bare. It was a strange intimacy, teetering between vulnerability and the possible shattering of their fragile bond. Legs trembling, he fought against the urge to flee. For the first time in years, he stood at the precipice between the faceless janitor and the man he buried under layers of other people's expectations. "What are you doing with this?" Lily's voice pulled him from his thoughts, steady yet laced with confusion. Her light, usually warm, now seemed dimmed by the weight of the revelation sprawled before her. "Those are just things," he muttered, the familiar stammer creeping into his voice. A hedge against reality, a moment of denial that flitted through his mind, but he recognized its futility. These items were proof of a life he'd carefully orchestrated to remain hidden. "Just things? Jack, are you a millionaire?" Her incredulity became a punchline to an unfunny joke. Disbelief tightened her features while the reality of his world pressed heavily on their interaction. Jack had to force back the urge to explain the years of struggle leading to his choice, the reason behind his masquerade of humility. Instead, he simply nodded, searching for the right words to articulate his vision for the world, a vision Lily struggled to comprehend. I wanted to help people, but I thought if I shared this part of me, I would lose the connection we've built. I wasn't ready for this," he confessed, the thundering hooks of honesty surfacing in a tidal wave of vulnerability. Lily took a moment processing his admission. Jack's heart raced as she turned pensive, searching for what lay beneath the surface. "Do you think money changes how people see you?" she finally asked. The weight of her question hung between them like an anchored balloon, swaying softly yet refusing to float away. "It doesn't have to," he replied, his voice a whisper. "But sometimes it does." I didn't want it to be the only thing they saw. In her eyes he saw flickers of understanding, but also the unease of betrayal. She might have originally valued him for his humble heart, but the money ran deep, like a dark vein cutting through their connection. Would Lily see this as a mark of distinction, or as a chasm expanding between them? Their silence stretched, feeling pregnant with potential, a moment that could lead to enlightenment or dissolution. It was in this very stillness that a spark ignited within Jack. He realized that visibility could be his ally, not his enemy. Perhaps wealth didn't have to equate to isolation. Instead, it could be a vessel to uplift those around him. But coming to that conclusion required risk. "Do you think I should hide this from the world?" he asked, careful not to sway her decision with any leading words. "Or should I transform it into something that can genuinely foster change?" He was no longer merely questioning her. He was grappling with his internal turmoil, weighing the options in the balance of their newfound knowledge. Lily looked deep into his eyes, the tension thickening again as she weighed the consequences of either choice, a journey into his past or a path toward the future. "You could change everything with your resources," she said slowly, her voice gaining strength. "But if you choose to help people out of the shadows, you risk yourself in ways you can't predict." Each word from her lips felt like a challenge and an invitation. The world he had avoided lay open before him, the ambiguity of his power, the moral dilemmas of wealth, and most importantly, the chance for them to create something meaningful together. Just as Jack felt his resolve crystallizing, a series of footsteps echoed through the corridor, harsh against the calm backdrop of their conversation. The door swung open, revealing a group of laughing attorneys oblivious to their intimacy. His heart sank. Would this be the moment everything changed? Or merely the start of a lifetime spent defining who Jack Harrison could truly become? In that very instance, the clear choice he thought he had dissolved into chaos, and clarity became a whispered promise lost in the ebb of uncertainty. Would he choose to step forward and embrace this new identity, or retreat behind the walls he had so painstakingly built? The time had come to face his secret. What lay beyond that open door could lead him to freedom or drag him back to hiding. Jack barely had time to compose himself before the attorneys filled the room with their brash laughter. They strolled in, their voices echoing against the sterile walls, oblivious to the charged atmosphere he and Lily had fostered. His heart thudded heavily in his chest. Every nerve screamed at him to retreat, yet he stood frozen, a novice in a sea of seasoned professionals. Lily shifted, her expression caught between sympathy and the need to remain composed. Jack feared her discomfort was a mirror of his own. She understood his predicament but wasn't sure how to navigate the unexpected revelation. The group conversed casually, tossing around industry jargon that felt foreign to Jack in this context. An executive, unyielding and authoritative, waved a hand dismissively, as if their sophisticated world were impenetrable, while Jack felt like a drifting leaf caught between two storms. The risk, he realized, now lay not only within him, but in the reality that surrounded them. Would this encounter break him open, or keep him confined to the manufactured persona he had donned for far too long? He fought against the urge to shrink beneath the weight of judgment he imagined from the flash of polished suits around him. "Jack, come join us," one of them hollered, barely glancing in his direction. The invitation felt like a beckoning to the lion's den. They were reaching beyond the surface, extending a hand he doubtlessly didn't deserve. The facade of the janitor was fading, but who would he become in their eyes? "No thanks," he managed to choke out, voice thick. He sensed Lily's eyes on him, her concern etched across her face. It was as if she too could sense the struggle he faced. Would she be disappointed if he slipped back into the shadows? A cacophony of mingling voices pushed him to the edge of decision. The laughter and casual camaraderie intensified his internal fray. What if their camaraderie is built on compromise? What if behind that laughter lies a willingness to overlook who I truly am? He mused. Glimpsing a reflection in a nearby window, the janitor's uniform only enhanced by their stark attire, he grappled with his identity. He thought about the changes he could make with the resources he had stashed away. "Helping others doesn't require grandeur," he whispered to himself. But those words were lost as the tension in the room thickened. Lily stepped closer, her presence a grounding force. "You have voice in this, Jack. The world doesn't have to see you through a lens of wealth or despair," she urged gently. Her resolve made him wonder. In this moment, could he address his fears while simultaneously embracing the truth that simmered beneath his skin? Jack took a breath, a gut-wrenching gulp of resolve mixed with uncertainty. "What if I allowed them to see me as I am?" he thought, his pulse quickening. "What if, instead of hiding behind assumptions, I stepped forward, showing them how far I've come despite the odds?" Suddenly the room became a canvas, each conversation a brushstroke on his evolving reality. With that realization, the fear inside him transformed into a different kind of energy, a questioning force, one that urged him to delve deeper, to examine how his wealth could uplift others rather than isolate him. As Jack contemplated reclaiming his narrative, the leader of the group slammed a hand on the table, commanding attention. "This company is about to make significant strides. Who's ready to claim their dreams?" The sound reverberated through Jack's core, an invitation to redefine what ambition meant. Now, with the weight of choice pressing down like a mantle, he felt the urge to shatter his self-imposed barriers. "Maybe I'm ready to step beyond janitorial duties," Jack thought, locking eyes with Lily again, drawing strength from her unwavering gaze. Could I embrace this next phase with courage? But as he prepared to speak, a text notification chimed sharply in his pocket. Heart racing, he retrieved his phone and glanced at the screen, the sudden electricity dousing his newfound courage. A message from an unexpected source, a reminder that old ties could still haunt his present choices. What awaited him on the other side of that door? A new path or a return to safeguard his carefully crafted illusion? The moment of truth churned dangerously close, the weight of his decision thickening in the air. Would he choose to redefine himself, or would the call of comfort tether him to yesterday's version of himself? Jack's fingers hovered over the phone's screen, his heart racing in sync with the electrical pulse of vulnerability coursing through him. The name flashing on the screen was one he hadn't anticipated seeing again. Megan, an old friend from his past life. A flood of memories rushed back, shared laughter, dreams of grandeur, and a friendship rooted in an understanding he felt was now foreign to him. He hesitated, the text beckoning him back to a chapter he thought he had closed. "Jack?" Lily's voice cut through the haze of his thoughts, gentle yet insistent. Her gaze, intense and unwavering, anchored him. "What's going on?" That look. Her brows knitted together with concern. It's just..." Jack swallowed hard, struggling to find the words that seemed to have fled his throat. He glanced back at the screen, the cursor blinking at him mockingly, urging action. What could he possibly say? "It's an old friend," he finally replied. Lily's eyes remained fixed on him, probing and perceptive. "If it's weighing on your mind, maybe it's worth exploring. You don't just have to walk away." Her encouragement sparked something deep within him. Memories of their last encounters, before he shifted from ambitions of success to burying himself in janitorial duties, flashed like fireflies in a darkening sky. Megan had seen his potential, often pushing him toward the goal of a brighter future, but he distanced himself, burying that part of him in a tower of isolation. Could reconnecting mean bringing back old wounds or ignite new possibilities? He exhaled slowly, contemplating that flickering possibility. So much had changed, but had he really changed? What if I'm not that person anymore, Lily? What if I can't reclaim that dream? Or what if you've become someone better because you've seen life from another angle? Her words hung in the air, challenging and inviting him to consider a paradox he hadn't thought to explore. Determination began to weave itself into the fabric of his hesitation. He rolled his shoulders back, nodding slightly in silent affirmation of Lily's encouragement. Maybe Megan's message could be the bridge that spanned the gulf of his self-doubt. He let his thumb hover over the message, fingers trembling with uncertainty and anticipation. In that moment, Jack had to wrestle not only with the weight of a life-changing choice but also with the fear of what lay under the surface of that unresolved friendship. A burst of laughter erupted from the attorneys, jolting him out of his reverie. They were all absorbed in their own world, blissfully unaware of the turmoil swirling inside him. Glancing back at Lily, her unwavering gaze reminded him that support was present. With an unexpected resolve, he hit reply. The mechanism felt like flipping a switch that had long been dormant. The ensuing silence was filled with tensely anticipated potential, each moment layered with the weight of possibilities. Perhaps reconciliation with his past could illuminate the path to his future. As he typed a cautious response, he considered the implications of what reaching out could mean for him, wondering anew about the value of those old ties. Did he need to bring the past into his present? Just as he pressed send, another loud thud reverberated through the room, making everyone pause. The table had shifted beneath the executive's weight, creating a distraction that drew attention away from Jack's quiet storm. "Megan," he whispered, the name hanging in the air, a plea and promise intermingled. Yet, as the group resumed conversation, the depth of Jack's decision remained planted firmly in his mind. Would this connection with his past lead him toward the courage he sought, or would it spiral him back into the shadows he had fought so hard to escape? The room pulsed with energy and purpose, but Jack stood on the precipice of his fate. The tension in his gut coiled tighter. Could he step fully into a new identity, or would he forever drift between two worlds, struggling to choose? The moment had come to confront not just the ghosts from the past, but the very essence of who he was destined to become. Would the voice of his former self echo a clarion call toward authentic success? Or would he falter in the face of the truth Megan could expose? As the conversations echoed around him, Jack felt the pulse of the world surge anew. And just beyond the horizon of his fears lay the most daunting challenge yet, confronting the truths locked away in his heart, and the choices that could redefine him entirely. Jack sat back in his chair, the vibrations of his phone still resonating in his palm. The message he'd sent lingered in his thoughts, and with it came an avalanche of uncertainty. What was waiting on the other side of that digital divide? Would Megan even remember him, or would she look upon his faded aspirations with pity? Each possibility felt like a precarious balance beam he'd have to walk, teetering between the familiar warmth of their shared past and the cold reality of who he had become. Lily's voice broke through the fog again, a beacon of clarity in his tumult. "You look like you're about to make a big decision, Jack. What's next?" Taking a deep breath, he focused on the lingering weight of the moment, the momentous shift he'd enacted by reaching out. Lily's interest made him feel seen, arguably for the first time in years. "I don't know yet," I just hope it doesn't end up as another reminder of how far I've fallen, or a testament to how far you can go if you embrace who you really are," she countered, an undeniable spark lighting her expression. He appreciated her support, but the path continued to loom darkly in front of him. He needed clarity, a roadmap to navigate this jagged terrain of personal reinvention. The conversations around him reawakened his discomfort. How could he fit in among such ambition when he felt like an imposter in his own skin? Determined, Jack decided that avoidance was no longer an option. Closing his eyes, he conjured up the scenes of the life he once yearned for. The meetings where ideas sparked innovation, the late nights filled with project passion, and the collaborations that felt electric. Could he still harness that energy, or had it dissipated into the mundane? He took another breath, this one laden with recognition. The hard truth was, he had buried his own dreams. Those dreams had not vanished. They had waited patiently, lingering beneath the surface. Jack opened his eyes, holding on to that realization. In the days following the message, Jack made a quiet determination. He would begin to chase the person he wanted to be, starting from the ground up. He planned small steps to help him reclaim a sense of purpose each day. During breaks at work, instead of scrolling mindlessly through his phone, he would read articles about the industry, the very one he used to thrive in. He began to jot down thoughts, ideas he could explore. One afternoon, pulling an empty trash bin from a corner of the office, he overheard a meeting in a conference room. Colleagues voiced opinions with confidence, discussing strategies and prospects, each voice stronger than his self-doubt. Jack paused, a flash of envy fueling his resolution. He returned to his office, the banter swirling like a vortex around him. Instead of allowing himself to remain a passive observer, something inside ignited. Jack began speaking up in meetings, voicing opinions he'd reserved for the shadows. If they questioned his insights, he wouldn't hide behind silence. He would assert his presence. It was terrifying, yet thrilling. But just as he began gathering momentum, the anticipation of Megan's reply loomed. Would she quell the courage he had started to cultivate, or would she fan the flames of his ambition? When a new notification rang out, his heart leaped. This time it wasn't just his inner voice echoing his fears. Reaching for the phone, he hesitated once again. The consequences of reconnecting were unknown, but it was clearer than ever that whether he forged ahead or stepped back, change was inevitable. What lay in the response from Megan could reshape everything. A chance to reconcile with the past or propel him into a future he had yet dared to envision. The moment had arrived to step toward that uncertain horizon. Would he embrace the person he was evolving into? Or would he retreat once more into the shadows he's battled against for so long? Jack's fingers trembled as he swiped the notification open. The truth awaited him, but could he handle its consequences? Jack's heart raced as he opened the message. Words formed on the screen, but they seemed distant, almost shrouded in a haze of anxiety. It took him another heartbeat to pull himself from the edge of apprehension and read Megan's reply. It felt brief, yet it breathed life into him, rejuvenating the ambitions he thought long buried. "Hey, Jack. Of course I remember you. Let's catch up soon. Megan." Relief washed over him, accompanied by a surge of fresh determination. This was not just a reconnection. It was an opportunity, a chance to step into the light rather than lurk in dim corners of his life. He envisioned their meeting as a moment of reckoning, not just for them, but for himself. It was about building bridges, not just reminiscing about the past. With that fire ignited, he turned to the tasks ahead with fervor. Instead of retreating into doubt, he began drafting a series of actions. First, he would prepare for his conversation with Megan as if it were a pitch to a pivotal client. He sketched out the contours of his goals and aspirations, acknowledging where he wanted to head, rather than where he'd been tethered. Every morning, Jack devoted time to researching trends in his field, diving deeper into areas where his passion reignited. He found himself scouring articles, attending webinars, and even reaching out to former colleagues, rekindling connections that had grown dormant. He was no longer a passive participant, he was engaging, learning and evolving, and each small success tightened the threads of his emerging identity. However, as he initiated this revival, a familiar unease crept in, whispering doubts born of years of avoidance. Was this truly who he was becoming, or a facade to cover the gaps? To reconcile these feelings, Jack turned to Lily for feedback. She had been an ardent supporter, providing clarity when self-reflection became muddied. "Honesty, Jack. What do you see when you envision your future?" she asked during one of their catch-ups. "A man who influences others, who leads projects that create value," he replied. But even as he spoke, layers of fear cracked through his confidence. "But what if it's just a fantasy? What if I fail to evolve?" Ask yourself, why are you afraid? Failing means you tried for something better. That's powerful, and every failure is just a lesson wrapped in hard truth. Her words penetrated the self-doubt that threatened to suffocate him. They drove home a realization. Failure was not an endpoint, it was merely a stepping stone along this rocky path toward self-actualization. He resolved to embrace not only the potential for success but also the inevitability of missteps along the way. Days turned into weeks, and the date of Jack's meeting with Megan approached. As he prepared for their encounter, a swell of nostalgia intersected with a steely resolve. He pictured their discussions filled with mutual respect, collaboration, and excitement. Nothing like a mere ghost of their past. Instead of sighing over lost potential, he envisioned crafting new dreams. But as he approached the day, apprehension simmered beneath his surface. Would his reimagination of himself resonate with her? The fear of disappointment lurked like an unwelcome guest, waiting for its moment to strike. Yet he refused to let it sabotage this nascent hope. On the eve of their meeting, Jack took a long walk, letting the crisp evening air invigorate him. He questioned his motivations. What was he hoping to achieve by reconnecting? Was it simply nostalgia? Or was he stepping into an arena where he could forge genuine connections moving forward? The evening settled into a quiet introspection, and for the first time, he stopped assessing himself through a lens of past failures. He recognized his capability to impact others profoundly, not only through work, but in his personal life as well. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack stood before his next significant leap. Conversations with Megan could reshape his understanding of worthiness, and within that lay the power to redefine his emerging self. Would their time together spark collaborations that reflected the person he yearned to be, or would it retrace steps he had fought to escape? With hope fueling him, Jack resolved to meet Megan with unwavering authenticity. The world awaited their reunion, but so did a deeper truth about himself, one he was finally ready to confront. Little did he know, there was another surprise waiting for him, one that could propel his journey even further. Jack's palms felt clammy as he approached the cafe where he and Megan had agreed to meet. The familiar aroma of roasted coffee beans wafted through the air, clashing with the nerves tightening in his chest. He took a deep breath, mentally rehearsing the dialogue he had prepared. It wasn't just a conversation, it was a pivotal encounter that could either elevate his self-image or drag him back into the shadows. He spotted her sitting at a corner table, a hint of uncertainty flickering across her face as she glanced around. Jack felt an unexpected surge of warmth mixed with trepidation. She looked like a beacon of everything he once aspired to be. As he walked over, he noticed the little changes, the way she held herself, how her eyes sparkled with ambition. Would he reflect that same energy, or would he once again reveal the fragments of a man hesitant to step into the light? "Hey, Megan," he greeted, forcing the smile that hovered uneasily on his lips. "Jack, it's been ages," she replied, her voice laced with genuine warmth. As they exchanged pleasantries, he felt the weight of his resolutions pressing down on him. This was his moment to define who he was, to show the growth he had been nurturing in the weeks leading up to this. However, as the conversation drifted from past memories to current projects, he felt a creeping insecurity. What if he stumbled? What if the image he worked so hard to cultivate shattered in front of her? He decided to pivot the conversation. "I've been diving back into the industry. trying to reconnect with the trends and dynamics of our field. It's exhilarating, he said, his voice gaining steadiness. He began to share the steps he was taking to reignite his career, emphasizing specific initiatives and connections. As he spoke, he saw Megan's interest growing, her eyes widening with intrigue. "You've really been stepping up, haven't you?" she encouraged, leaning in. Her affirmation fanned the flames of his confidence. They exchanged ideas, exploring shared goals and aspirations. The discussion flourished into a lively exchange, and Jack felt less like a ghost trapped in past failures and more like a catalyst for change. But as Megan spoke about her recent projects, he couldn't help but notice the palpable energy she exuded, one he yearned to embody. He questioned whether his efforts would ever reach that level. It struck him that he still harbored insecurities about not being enough. As the conversation progressed, a pivotal moment arrived when she looked directly into his eyes and asked, "What do you want, Jack?" "Really?" Her straightforwardness caught him off guard. He hesitated, letting the question swirl in his mind. What did he want? He realized it wasn't merely about career achievements or professional recognition. It was deeper. He wanted connection, fulfillment, and to contribute something meaningful. "I want to inspire others," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I realize that I've been so focused on avoiding failure that I've neglected the possibility of making genuine progress. I want to lead, create, and build something that matters." Megan's expression transformed into one of understanding. "Then do it. You're the only one holding yourself back." Her words acted as a mirror, reflecting the underlying truth he had been suppressing. She was right. He needed to step beyond self-imposed barriers. This conversation marked a turning point, a dawning realization that success was not a destination to be feared but an evolving journey to be embraced. As they wrapped up, laughter filled the air, punctuating Jack's newfound sense of resolve. He felt lighter, empowered, knowing he had the ability to sculpt his future actively. But as they exchanged farewells, a nagging question lingered. Had he truly unlocked his potential, or was this merely an initial step towards a more complex reality? Walking away, he caught a glimpse of something unexpected from the corner of his eye. A familiar face lingered just outside the cafe, a former colleague with ties to an influential project he had once turned down. Their eyes locked momentarily before she disappeared into the street. The encounter left Jack puzzled. What twists awaited him now that he had begun to reshape his narrative? Would the past come back to test his resolve, or was it an opportunity waiting to be seized? Jack felt an electric tension within. The answers were calling him, and he was determined to find out. Jack struggled to parse the encounter's significance as he walked away from the cafe. The fleeting glance from his former colleague loomed large in his mind, and he found himself replaying their exchange, trying to decode its meaning. That moment felt like a whisper from the past, hinting at unresolved matters that still had a hold on him. As he ambled through the urban streets, he felt a mix of urgency and a slow boiling dread swirling in his stomach. He had just declared his desire to inspire others, yet here he was, still tethered to the shadows of earlier choices. What would it require to truly break free? Each step felt heavy, a reminder of the risks that lay ahead. Jack headed back to his apartment, formulating a plan. He needed to reconnect with the professional world he'd sidelined and confront the fears that held him back. Tomorrow, he decided, he'd reach out to that familiar face, the colleague whose presence haunted him. Her insights could offer clarity or perhaps a second chance. As night fell, he perched on the edge of his bed, the dim light casting shadows along the walls. With his laptop open before him, he hesitated. Would reaching out signal vulnerability, or would it represent a proactive leap towards his aspirations? He took a deep breath, wrestling with self-doubt, and began typing an email. "Hi, Sarah. I hope this finds you well. I saw you the other day and it reminded me of our past projects together." Words flowed from his fingertips, mixing a cocktail of nostalgia with newfound determination. He shared snippets of his recent awakening, of the growth in his journey, and how much he longed to discuss how their paths might intersect again. As he pressed send, a wave of anxiety washed over him. What if she didn't remember him fondly? What if he'd simply made a fool of himself? Amidst the swirl of dizzying thoughts, Jack stood up and paced. To inspire was his aim, but he couldn't help but feel the weight of an overwhelming fear. There it was again. The fear of rejection mingling with the fear of success. This contradiction simmered within him, tugging at the delicate threads he had begun to weave. Determined to reclaim his narrative, he pulled out a notebook full of fragmented ideas. Half-baked projects, sketches of goals, aspirations scribbled during sleepless nights. He stared at the pages, and a flicker of realization sparked in his mind. There was a common theme weaving through his aspirations. He needed a platform. He couldn't inspire simply through words or aspirations. He needed a project, something tangible he could pour himself into. This revelation ignited sparks of ambition he hadn't felt in years. Could he create something, even at a micro level, that others could rally around? The thought scuffed against his insecurities, but he leaned into the discomfort. He would start small, but he would start. As the evening deepened, Jack conceptualized a community initiative blending mentorship with skill sharing, aimed at giving voice to those who felt unheard, like him, not that long ago. It was a project that could intertwine his desire to inspire with the very acts of leading and creating he longed to embody. Perhaps he could draft a proposal, invite past colleagues to collaborate, and reignite relationships that faded in the wake of his past failures. A sharp ping from his laptop jolted him from his thoughts, a reply from Sarah. His heart raced as he opened the email. "Hi Jack, great to hear from you. I remember our time working together vividly." His mind swirled. There lay an opening, a way to reconnect. But just as quickly, doubt wove itself back into the fabric of his thoughts. What if she saw through his newfound resolve? Could he soar, or would he crash and burn? Jack took a deep breath, staring at her response, a flickering flame of opportunity igniting within him. The time had come to face not only the past, but also the ambition that dared him to step boldly forward. He realized that the real journey awaited him, one that demanded he confront both his talents and his fears. But as Jack read Sarah's words again, another thought cut through the haze. Was he ready to face whatever truths lay hidden in their conversations? That question loomed larger, intertwining with the looming uncertainty of his path ahead. What revelations awaited as he navigated the challenges that were sure to come? Jack awoke the next morning with the sunrise flickering through the blinds, a cascade of light illuminating the tangled thoughts in his mind. The email from Sarah sat unresolved in his inbox, a beacon that alternated between promise and pressure. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, feeling the cool touch of the floor. Today was the day he'd face whatever uncertainties arose. He shook off the remnants of sleep and poured himself a cup of coffee, each sip igniting a sense of urgency within him. He could not afford to hover in indecision. Every moment wasted felt like a retreat in his newfound mission. He envisioned his community initiative, the plan that lingered between idea and execution, and his heartbeat quickened with anticipation. But he also felt the familiar grip of anxiety around his throat. "Just breathe," he mumbled to himself, repeating the words like a mantra. How many times had he given in to this unease in the past? Would today mark a departure from that pattern? Or would it tether him again to the familiar chains of self-doubt? After a few fleeting moments of contemplation, he opened his laptop and stared at Sarah's response again. With each word he reread, possibilities unveiled themselves. Jack was driven to share his vision with her. After all, they had shared a professional history built on collaboration and respect. Drafting a follow-up email, he let his fingers dance across the keys, infusing his message with both enthusiasm and vulnerability. He proposed a meeting, an informal coffee catch-up, where they could discuss not just their memories together, but where his ambitions could take them. Just as he was about to hit send, he hesitated. Would she see through the facade of his burgeoning confidence? Steeling himself, he pressed send and leaped up from the desk, pacing the space in a nervous rhythm. The walls felt constrictive, mirroring the tightness in his chest. He knew he couldn't simply wait for her response, that the past didn't hold all the answers he sought. His notebook beckoned him once more, the fragmentary plans and ideas waiting for solid form. With renewed purpose, he sat back down, flipping to a fresh page. This was his moment to define what he wanted to become. He began organizing his thoughts into coherent sections. Mentorship, skill sharing, community. These ideas needed structure. Drawing a mind map, he marked down everything he envisioned, actively combating the creeping self-criticism that whispered he'd never be able to follow through. Time melted away as he poured himself into this work. Hours passed, but the creations on the page invigorated him. Jack could see it, a framework taking shape, one that could draw others in because it was more than just a concept. It was his heart laid bare. Suddenly, the sharp ping of an incoming email sliced through his concentration. Jack's heart raced as he opened it, a reply from Sarah. "I'd love to meet, Jack. How about this Friday?" A rush of excitement crashed over him. She was in. Yet beneath that thrill, a sense of foreboding returned. What if she questioned his motivations? What if she didn't see the significance of his aspirations? The weight of his own expectations pressed heavily against him. Against the backdrop of his mounting anxiety, Jack concocted a strategy for their meeting. He would share his visions and enkindle discussion, but what would he offer her in return? After all these years, had he truly refined himself into a figure worth emulating? A wave of determination surged within him. Perhaps he could outline a call to action, a proposal more than just words, a way to show Sarah the preacher he wanted to be wasn't just a hollow echo of his past failures. But as he prepared, a question lingered. Had he truly decided to step into the light, or was he still fumbling through shadows? With Friday drawing closer, Jack felt the familiar churn of his stomach, a collision of self-doubt and anticipation, an inward conflict that would demand a resolution. Could he channel these complex emotions into something transformative? In an unexpected twist, an old acquaintance's name popped into his mind, someone who had once taught him resilience in the face of adversity. Jack knew he would need her perspective as well, a reminder of strength forged through challenges. What wisdom could she impart today? The tension hummed in the air. With the clock ticking and his vision solidifying, Jack understood the moment of truth was approaching. Would he move forward with conviction, or would he once again falter in the self-imposed shadows? Jack stood at the forefront of a new chapter, the sun spilling golden light across the urban landscape where he had once faded into the background. This Friday, he understood, would not merely be another meeting. It would be a new beginning, a culmination of his journey toward personal and professional reclamation. The heightened anticipation felt electric as he prepared for his rendezvous with Sarah. Each deliberate step in the days leading up to it carried a weight he hadn't realized he craved. He meticulously penned out notes and reflections regarding his community initiative, a project that springboarded from obscure ideas into palpable structures. This budding venture was not just an escape from his past, but rather a restorative reclamation of his identity, one he was finally proud to embrace. When Friday arrived, Jack tailored his appearance to reflect the burgeoning confidence he felt inside. Clad in a crisp, neatly fitted shirt, he took a moment in front of the mirror, an everyday act becoming a rite of passage. This wasn't just a cosmetic change. It was a symbolic shedding of layers, reclaiming his narrative from the shadows of anonymity he once felt shackled by. Arriving at the cafe, the familiar aroma of roasted coffee swirled around him, crisping the air. He spotted Sarah instantly, and she looked just as he remembered, poised, engaging, and eager to embrace the conversation. They exchanged greetings, but this time Jack's smile didn't waver. He was not here to apologize for his absence. He was ready to articulate his journey and aspirations with an authenticity that had previously eluded him. "Jack, it's great to see you again," she greeted warmly, her enthusiasm radiating through the air as they settled into their seats. With newfound confidence coursing through him, he dove into his vision. "I've been exploring some ideas recently, ways to foster community connections through mentorship and skill-sharing initiatives. I'd love to brainstorm how we could merge our experiences and insights into something powerful." As he shared, his eyes lit up with passion. Each word flowed with conviction, replete with the countless hours of thought he had poured into shaping this new venture. Sarah leaned in, her interest transparent, Her questions pierced through the layers of hesitance that once cloaked him, prompting him to articulate the details of his evolving vision and the impact he hoped to achieve. "This is impressive, Jack," she declared, nodding. "I can see how your experiences could fuel this initiative. The potential to empower others through mentorship is profound." Her validation struck a harmonious chord within him. The hesitations that clung to him just moments before dissipated. Jack reveled in each shared idea, flowing back and forth as their dialogue transformed into one of collaboration rather than mere acquaintance. But as the conversation evolved, a wave of humility washed over Jack. He thought back to his past, a time when he viewed his wealth as both a burden and a blessing, locked away beneath the guise of humility. Now, that past served as fuel, igniting his desire for genuine impact rather than flimsy aspirations. "You have an incredible vision," Sarah remarked as they wrapped up their meeting. "But remember, true leadership is about vulnerability. Don't hesitate to be real about your journey. It's what makes your story resonate." The connection shared in that moment was profound. Jack found himself on the precipice of a long-awaited awakening. He had shed the fearful janitor's persona and embraced the man he longed to be, one who was ready to lead not from a place of power, but from genuine commitment to inspiring change. As they parted ways, Sarah's encouragement echoed in his mind. "We'll follow this up, right?" she asked, the spark of collaboration ignited in her eyes. "Absolutely," Jack replied, meaning it with full gravity. Walking back through the city streets, he felt the emergence of a distinct identity blossom within him, a far cry from the invisible janitor he once was. Recognized competently, he understood the journey ahead called for action, resilience, and connection. With renewed focus, he resolved to channel his wealth into community upliftment, rather than isolation. By evening, Jack drafted a proposal detailing the community initiative, shaping it with actionable insights derived from their discussion. The knowledge that he was not just a solitary figure but part of a greater network ignited his ambitions like never before. With each keystroke, he demonstrated his growth, crafting a narrative armed with titular authority and genuine intent. When he read his closing lines aloud, confidence tightened around him, illuminating every fear that had once held him captive. This was a project birthed from not just aspiration, but from a commitment to authenticity. Jack Harrison's transformation was distinct from what it once was, a millionaire hidden beneath uniforms. Now, he was a visionary seeking to connect lost souls, and through that collective journey, he found deliverance. Finally, Jack understood. True empowerment didn't just reside in wealth but flourished in the bonds forged through shared struggles, dreams, and courage. As he hit send to deliver the proposal, a palpable sensation of satisfaction washed over him. He had achieved a rebirth in identity, a recognition of his competence that transcended monetary value. No longer did he flinch at his reflection. Instead, he stood tall, proud of the journey undertaken to bridge the very worlds he thought irreconcilable. This was not just a conclusion but the genesis of an impactful legacy. Jack was ready, more than ever, to embrace the power of his story, to uplift others, and to inspire through action. Now, as he prepared to reach out to many more former colleagues and friends with his vision, Jack realized his deepest satisfaction rested in the unknown adventures waiting ahead. Each step, a deliberate stride into the light. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover their own power. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear what you think. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share.